Coulas v. Smith, 1964. Supreme Court of Arizona. Court. This case was decided in the Supreme Court of Arizona in 1964. Issue. The issue for this case is whether or not a default judgment is proper once an answer on merits has been filed by the defendant, who subsequently fails to appear at trial. Facts. These are the facts of this case. The plaintiff, Paul J. Smith, filed a complaint against Nicholas Coulas and William J. Bray, the defendants, for money due on an open account in a promissory note. The defendants answered the complaint, with each asserting various counterclaims and cross-claims. Each party responded to the applicable cross-claims and counterclaims. The original trial date was October 10th, but counsel for the plaintiff and defendant Bray stipulated at a hearing to continue the trial until December 10th. Defendant Coulas' counsel was not present at this hearing, even though they were notified by the clerk. However, the defendant denies receiving notice by the clerk of the new trial date. Because defendant Coulas was not present at the trial, judgments were entered against him on each applicable claim. 2 years later, defendant Coulas filed a motion to set aside and vacate the judgment, claiming the default judgment was void since he did not receive 3 days' notice. However, the trial court denied this motion, which led the defendant to appeal the trial court's denial in the Supreme Court of Arizona. Holding. The Supreme Court of Arizona stated that default judgment may not be entered against a defendant who fails to appear at trial once an answer on the merits has been filed, and a case is not at issue. Rule 55 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure allows for entry of default judgment only when a party has failed to plead or otherwise defend the action, and the defendant did defend the action by answering claims against him. However, the Supreme Court of Arizona also stated that the judgment against the defendant was not a default one, because the plaintiff and defendant Bray met the burden of proof for their case during the new trial date. Despite defendant Coulas contending that he did not receive notice, he would have learned of the changed date when he appeared for the trial on the original date in October. Additionally, Coulas was precluded from attacking the judgment more than 6 months after, so the Supreme Court of Arizona affirmed the trial court's denial of motion to set aside and vacate judgment for damages on open account and promissory note. Rule to remember. When a case is called for trial and is at issue, the failure of a defendant to appear does not warrant a default judgment against them. If a defendant pleads on the merits of a case but does not show up at trial, the judgment entered against him is not a default judgment.